What's good, y'all? Today I'm going to teach you guys to make your own shoulder bag with this step-by-step tutorial. These are a great daily use bag for carrying your essentials, and I love this pattern because it's fairly simple, but it's also really clean and functional and great for customization. As I've started to roll out some bag patterns, I figured it was finally time to do the shoulder bag pattern. The link to the pattern is below. Once you get it, it'll be emailed to you as a PDF that you can print off at home, and it will come with some extra notes and some chances to win some free things. Then this video will give you the extra info you need, as well as the step-by-step tutorial to help you make this pattern come to life. I'll be doing some things throughout this video to customize this bag, but the focus of this video is going to be on making this bag in its simplest form. I would say that this pattern is in the intermediate range, but at the end of this video, I will be sharing some things that can help make this bag more beginner friendly, so don't be intimidated. Once you've tested the pattern too, I encourage you to make some changes to it to make it your perfect fit, and I'll share some tips on how to do that at the end of this video as well. But without further ado, let's get into it.
All you're gonna need is the base fabric of your choice. I'm using denim. The lining fabric of your choice, I'm using cotton. Fusible interfacing, heavyweight backing, I'm using Decoville Heavy. The pattern, a number 10 zipper that's at least 9.5 inches long, 2 1-inch D-rings, 2 swivel hooks, 1 buckle slider in the same size, and then an 1/8 inch cord. Then glue, tape, and rivets are optional. You'll start by printing the pattern at 100% scale. I recommend printing it on a heavier paper like cardstock, and you'll want to measure this test square to make sure it printed properly. Now you can cut out the pattern pieces, cutting on the outside of the black lines. Then you can match the 2 A1 pieces and tape them together. Now your pattern should look something like this. There's a couple pieces that say cut on fold, and you can choose whether you want to cut them on the fold or you can print them twice and tape them together so that you can cut around the full piece. For the rectangular pieces, you can cut around the pattern pieces, or you can pull the measurements and cut with a ruler to get an even more precise cut. Regardless, you can start cutting your pieces now. Each pattern piece will tell you how many pieces to cut from each fabric, and I recommend marking the middle of each piece as you cut it. Once everything is cut, you should have 2 base pieces from the main fabric, 2 from the lining fabric, and 2 from the interfacing, 1 bottom strip piece cut from the main fabric, 1 from the lining, and 1 from the interfacing, 2 top strip pieces from the main fabric, 2 from the lining, and 2 from the interfacing, and then 1 D-ring strap piece cut from the main fabric, and then all your heavyweight backing pieces, so the 2 base pieces, the 2 top strip pieces, and 1 bottom strip piece. Now we're going to do some prep work, starting with the backing. The heavyweight backing is smaller than its respective piece because we don't want to sew through it. So you'll start by marking out a 1/2 inch around all of your pieces. You'll use this as a guide to center your backing pieces. Your backing pieces should match up perfectly with the outside of those lines. As you can see, it should be exactly a 1/2 inch from the edge if you cut your pieces precisely. Now we can get all of our backing pieces in place. You'll want to iron them well to make sure they're fully adhered, and make sure everything stays lined up as you iron. Since the backing isn't in the seam, we want an extra layer of protection to hold it in place, so we'll add the interfacing on top, which will sandwich the backing and keep it stuck in place. So we'll iron the interfacing on, making sure to press the edges around the backing to really seal it. Now your pieces should look like this with the backing and interfacing fused on. We're going to make the strap for the D-rings now. I'll start by marking the middle on the back side. You could just fold the both sides in and iron it, but I prefer to glue it to make it extra precise, and the stiffness from the glue adds extra durability. So I'll get some spread on the back too, then fold one side into the line, pressing it well as I go, then fold the other side to the edge we just folded so they meet in the middle. I like to make a line 1/8 of an inch from the edge on both sides, and that'll be my stitch line when I sew this on. Now we can get the D-rings on. I'll start by marking 3 inches from the edge on the wrong side of the strap, and another mark 1.5 inches from the edge. That middle mark is where the D-ring will be once it's folded, and we don't want to get glue on the D-ring, so we'll mark 3/8 of an inch in each direction from that middle line, and we're only going to glue the bottom area and top area, not the middle. So I'm going to get some glue in the bottom and top areas, then I'll get my D-ring in place, folding the edge to the 3-inch mark and pressing it well. Now our D-ring strap is ready to go. Now for the piping, you'll need to cut 2 pieces that are 1 3/8 of an inch wide and at least 26 inches long. Then cut 2 pieces of cording that are 1/8 of an inch thick and that are the same length as the pieces you just cut. Then you'll get the cord in there and you'll cut 1/4 inch slits so that the piping is able to curve nicely around your base piece. You'll need a presser foot that's able to get right up next to the cord because the edge of the fabric up to the cord is 3/8 of an inch, so you need to get right up next to the cord so that you have the correct seam allowance. And if you used a different size cord, you'll need to adjust the width of the fabric so that you still have the correct seam allowance.
Now that everything is prepped or ready to start sewing, before we do that though, I'm gonna give you a few notes. First off, I'm gonna be sewing everything with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Second, I'll be using a 3mm stitch length for all the seams and a 4mm stitch length for all of the top stitching. And last, since I have an industrial machine, I'll be using heavyweight thread, but if you have a domestic machine, just use whatever you can. It's perfectly fine. The bag will still turn out beautifully.
First thing I'm gonna do is get my lining pieces basted on for both base pieces, so I'll clip them in place, then I'll sew all the way around the edge, basting it on. Now I'll get the piping on, I'll clip it in place all the way around, making sure the edge of the piping matches the edge of the base piece. Once you get back to where you started, you'll trim the cord so that the 2 ends of the cord meet, and you'll fold the edge of the fabric back so that there's no raw edge. Then we'll line it up with the other end and clip it in place. I like to match the edge on the piping to the middle of the bottom. Then we can base the piping in place, making sure the edges stay in line. Now our base pieces are ready to go with the lining and piping on. Now I'll get my D-ring strap in place. I'll start by marking the middle of the bottom strip piece, which will be between 1 1/4 inch and 1 3/8 inch. Then I'll mark a 1/2 inch in each direction from that line, as well as 3/8 of an inch from the edge on both sides. The top of the D-ring should match up with those lines. However, from the edge of the fabric to the top of my D-ring is 7/8 of an inch, but every D-ring is different, meaning you may need to adjust your strap length slightly, so don't take the length of this pattern piece as the end all be all. Regardless, I'm going to tape my strap in place now, matching it with all the lines I marked out. Then I'll follow my lines and sew all the way around. When you get to the top, you'll pivot and sew across, then go back down the other side, going all the way around until you get back where you started. If you want to make it more durable, you can add a rivet in the middle right under the stitching on both sides. If you want to add purse feet on the bottom, you can follow the marks on the bottom strip pattern piece as well. Now I'll get the zipper in. The zipper will need to be 9.5 inches, and it needs to be a number 10 zipper because when I sew the zipper to the top strip pieces, it'll all match up with the bottom strip piece. So if you use a different size zipper, you'll have to change the width of the bottom strip or the top strip pieces so that they all match up. I set up the zipper myself, but you can use a preset one if you want. If you need to adjust the length of your zipper, I have a video showing how to do that I'll link below. I'll start by matching the right side of one of my top strip pieces to the right side of the zipper, and I'll tape it in place. Then I'll match the right side of the lining to the back of the zipper so that the zipper is sandwiched between the lining and the main fabric. So once it's sewn and you flip it, it'll be a clean finish on both sides. So I'll sew those pieces together, still with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Then I'll repeat those steps for the other side of the zipper, making sure that everything matches up on both sides, and I'll sew that side up as well. Then I'll flip it and iron it quick before top stitching it 1/8 of an inch from the edge, and this top stitch will go through the top piece, zipper, and lining. Once it's done, it should look something like this with a clean finish on both sides. If you used a preset zipper, you're done now. I'm gonna finish setting up my zipper. Make sure you leave at least 3/8 of an inch before the zipper stops. From the end of one zipper to the end of the other should be 9.5 inches. Now I'm gonna combine my middle strip pieces, so I'll start by matching the top strip to the bottom strip right sides together. Then I'll take the bottom strip lining piece and match the right side of it to the wrong side of the top strip piece, sandwiching it like I did for the zipper. Then I'll sew those 3 pieces together with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. You'll do that to the other side too, and now it should look something like this. So you have a clean finish on both sides once you flip it. Now it just needs to be top stitched. So I'll top stitch both sides 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Then I'll base the lining in place, sewing 1/4 inch from the edge all the way around on both sides of the middle strip. Now it should look something like this, and we're almost ready to connect it to the base pieces, but first I'm going to cut these slits right up to the basting line we just sewed, and I'll do that all the way around on both sides. Our pieces are ready to go now, so we can start combining things. So I'll start by matching the middle of the middle strip piece to the middle of the base piece, and I'll start clipping it in place all the way around, using the slits I cut to help spread it around the curves, and again, matching the middles of the top to make sure everything stays lined lined up. Now you won't be able to see the piping, but you'll be able to feel it as you sew. So just keep the presser foot tight against the cord as you sew around, and that'll give you your 3/8 inch seam allowance. So I'll sew all the way around, making sure everything stays lined up as I sew, and just make sure you go slow, especially as you go around the curves, keeping the presser foot tight against the cord. Now it should look something like this, and we're ready to get the other side on. So I'll clip it in place, and we'll want to make sure that we leave the zipper open when we sew this side on so that we're able to flip it. Then I'll get it sewn on. This side will be a little bit trickier because you can't flex it as much now, but just take your time and make sure everything stays lined up. Now that both sides are on, I can get my binding tape on. You can use store-bought binding tape. I prefer to make my own. Regardless, it needs to be 1 inch wide, so a 1/2 inch on each side when it's folded. So I'll clip it in place all the way around. It should go just barely past the stitching on both sides, and just do your best to keep it even. Then I'll sew it on about 1/8 of an inch from the lower edge of the binding tape. Take your time with this to make sure everything stays even as you sew. You're almost done, so don't start rushing things now. Once you do the same to the other side, it'll be ready to flip. If you used a heavyweight backing like I did, this part is tedious, but just slowly work the bag through the zipper. And don't worry, as long as you stitched everything correctly, nothing is gonna bust open as you flip it, but just take your time and get things turned. Once it's all flipped, you'll wanna go around and work the seams to make sure they're all laying flat and facing towards the middle strip, especially in the seam by both ends of the zipper. You'll really wanna press it to get that seam flat and so that things lay nicely. Just take your time and work around the bag, making sure everything looks nice and is sitting how it should. Now all that's left to do is make the shoulder strap. There's lots of ways to make one. For the sake of time, I'm not gonna go through the whole breakdown, but if you're interested in seeing how I make mine, I have a video on that I'll link below as well.
Now that the shoulder strap is done, the bag is complete. It came out super clean with no exposed edges on the inside or out. This is a really nice bag. It's a great size. Plus you can always add extra pockets like I did too. And it's an all around really well structured and beautiful bag.
Here's a closer look at the bag. I'm super happy with how it came out. As you can see, I added some extra things like the patchwork and the removable pocket.
Before you go, I'm gonna teach you a couple more things that'll help with making this bag, and I'm gonna show you the bag on body so that you have a size ref. Like I mentioned before, this bag is probably more in the intermediate range, but there is some ways to make the bag more beginner friendly, so I'm gonna run you through some of those. Using a heavyweight backing helps add some structure, but it also makes things stiffer, which in turn makes things a little bit trickier. So if you're not comfortable using a heavyweight backing, you can always skip that, or just use some extra interfacing or some heavier interfacing. I added piping to this bag, which helps add structure as well. Like I mentioned before, you need a presser foot that can get up tight next to the cord so that it's really snug in there. So if you don't have a presser foot like that and can't get one, or if you're just not comfortable doing piping, you can always skip on that and you can just sew it with a regular presser foot at a 3/8 inch seam allowance like you typically would. If it's the making of the piping cord that intimidates you more, you can always get store-bought piping as well.
I did the bag horizontally, but you could also do it vertically with the zipper on this side and the shoulder straps coming from these sides. If you want to do it vertically, you do everything the exact same, except when you attach the middle strip to the base pieces, you just rotate it 90 degrees so the zipper is centered on what was the side before. Only other thing you'd have to do is move the purse feet closer together. If you want to adjust the height or width of this bag, you'll start on your base piece, and I'd recommend folding it in half. So you want to take a 1/2 inch off the width. You'll take a 1/4 inch off of this half piece because when it's opened up, that'll give you your 1/2 inch, a 1/4 inch from each side. Just remember, the middle strip piece needs to match it, and if you take off a 1/2 inch, you're really taking off an inch from the circumference. So you need to take an inch off from the bottom or top strip piece too. Just remember, that'd mean that you need to adjust your zipper or your D-ring strap piece as well, and you'd have to adjust the backing pieces too. Adjusting the depth is much easier. You just add or subtract to the width of the bottom strip piece. So say I wanted to add a 1/4 inch, I'd need to add an extra 1/8 of an inch to the top strip pieces too. Since there's 2 of those top strip pieces, an extra 1/8 of an inch on both sides would give me my 1/4 inch so that my top and bottom stay lined up. Here's the bag on body. For reference, I'm 6'4". The shoulder strap is adjustable, so don't worry about that. I'm just showing the size of the bag itself.
I hope this tutorial was easy to follow. I'm still pretty new at this, so I'm always open to feedback from you guys to help make these videos better. If you want to see some of my other work, I'm also on Instagram and TikTok. And if you want more tutorials, make sure to subscribe here. I'll be posting at least once a month. Plus, I'll be doing giveaways for people that purchase my patterns and even people that just comment and subscribe on here. Have fun making your shoulder bag. This pattern has so much potential for customization, so have fun with it and get creative. I can't wait to see what y'all make. I love y'all.